Recently, a patron member of mine requested that I go over the most expensive games in my collection. Now, I'm not the kind of guy who exactly keeps track of the value of the games that I own. They've never really been the point of owning them, but I do own at least a couple that I know are worth a fair penny. That said, I certainly don't go out of my way to get the heavy hitters and break my bank. In fact, if some markets just got too expensive, like a great portion of the NES library did, there's a good chance I just called off collecting for it altogether and bought myself something like an EverDrive. I personally have a limit on how much I will spend on a game, and that's usually around $120 Canadian, or roughly 90 USD. And if I ever did spend that much, it would have to be something that I really wanted or needed to complete a set. Now, I do break that limit for collector's editions, but I hold those to somewhat different standards. A few caveats about this video, however. I will be using video game price charting for most of these games, and yes, I'm fully aware of the website's general lack of reliability. More than anything, I just want a rough look at what these things might be going for. For games not on there, I will use eBay's sold listings to gauge a price. I will also be including collector's editions on this list, but will notate the difference in value between standard releases and these special editions, as the difference in the rate of depreciation is generally quite notable. I will also include limited print games, like the ones sold by Limited Run Games. But where they are such a different market, I will section them off into their own category. At the end of this video, I will close with some thoughts on what I think will be rare or valuable in the future. Now, most games, as we know, depreciate in value. It's the incredibly uncommon ones that act otherwise. If we happen upon games only going for $40 to $50 in this video, don't be too surprised. I'm gonna make an early call here before doing any of my research and say that if we hit any games over $300, it will be only one and no more. But even hitting one that high seems unlikely given my spending habits. With that, let's start with the limited print games, going from the lower end and up. Bear in mind, what I'm including here is only a fraction of the limited print games I own, but the ones I think are most worthy of a list like this. So, looking through my limited run games purchases, the vast majority of these games seem to hover around 40 USD. And while yes, that is technically an appreciation in value, most of them don't seem quite notable enough. So we'll jump straight to one of Limited Run Games' most notable releases, Night Trap. In this case, the PlayStation 4 Collector's Edition. A fairly cheap release to get digitally, but a piece of history that enough people wanted to own and put on a shelf that it still goes for $64.36 in the aftermarket. Though the value of this one is not exactly the easiest to track. The base game itself seems to go for $41.04. Following this, we have Oddworld: Abe's Odyssey, the new and tasty remake of the game. This was one of the first huge releases from Limited Run Games that I had to have, having originally fallen in love with this game on the PC back when it was still new. Unsure of where I wanted to play it, I bought the game on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation Vita, and eventually settled on playing my Vita copy. For a complete in-box Vita copy, you'll be looking to spend around $93.50. Wow. For a new/factory sealed PlayStation 4 version, the price sits at $129 USD. That is a long ways from its original retail price of $29.99. To better complete my Senran Kagura collection, Limited Run Games put out a collector's edition for Bon Appetit. Not too much to remark on with this one, where this one is still very new, but the collector's edition is retailing at $75.52, just $25 more than the physical game by itself. And the only other limited game I want to look at is Shadow Warrior 2, put out by Special Reserve Games. Shadow Warrior is another series that, like Oddworld, I fell in love with back when it was new, and have since kept up to date with its releases. This Shadow Warrior 2 collection by Special Reserve Games really is an incredible set, minus the packaging. Unfortunately, for the sake of this video, they released the set in several different tiered sizes, and tracking the value of my particular set appropriately is proving rather difficult. The base game's recent sales seem to vary between $90 and $170 Canadian, but the collector's edition is bouncing somewhere between $200 and $300 Canadian. Though none of these CEs in the sold listing are quite the same edition as mine. Mine is similar, but includes quite a bit more. As you see, these ads only show the bag, the numbered scroll, and the game. My full set looks more like this. Given that, I can't really price this one accurately, but it stands to reason that it's somewhere in the high 200s and above. We're going to move along now to a different type of limited release, or rather a type of release whose name would have you believe that it is limited, when quite often that's not actually the case. we are looking at collector's editions. If a game's only physical release is in a collector's edition format, I will remove it from this section and just put it into the single releases section that follows. Like most games, these depreciate in value as well, but a truly limited set and one that commands a high fan base will not. The vast majority, however, just depreciate at a lesser rate. We'll start with the Tales of games, whose collector's editions are generally more than plentiful. Though I have a few of these collector's editions kicking around, their value, or lack thereof, isn't too notable. Tales of Zestiria, on the other hand, perhaps the most overproduced collector's edition of them all, and what seems to me to be the least desirable of the bunch, is still commanding the highest price of the ones that I own, still going for $74 USD. Not sure what's going on with Zestiria, but maybe it just needs more time to devalue. Here we have the Senran Kagura Estival vs. Bahanka's edition, an imported CE from PAL territories. I'm throwing this in here simply to say that I can't find any sold listings of it, so it's just kind of here as an oddity. Next up is Fire Emblem Fates, a collector's edition I was very lucky to get, and you have to have been pretty darn quick on the draw to secure. This rather low print game was highly scalped and very desirable as an overall easy way to just buy all 3 games at once. This collector's edition currently commands a price of $150 USD. Taking a look at the Galguns now, we have a few things to note. Galgun Double Piece on the PlayStation 4 is currently only a $28 game. However, the collector's edition has maintained its value at $138 USD. I also own a base copy of this game on Vita, and its pricing and price history is a bit too much of a mess to say its value with confidence, thanks to a misprint on the back claiming that this game with sexual content is rated E for everyone. Galgun 2's base game on PS4, much like Double Piece, is sticking around the $30 range. However, the collector's edition, the Free Hugs edition, is significantly harder to peg down, only having a sales history of 2 copies on eBay, both between $210 and $240 Canadian. Wow. And the only other collector's edition I want to look at is the one for Compile Heart and Idea Factory's Mary Skelter Nightmare. With a base game commanding a shocking $72.15 USD, this collector's edition ups the ante to the tune of $177.49. Wow. Granted, Mary Skelter Nightmares is a great game, but it's not quite $72.15, or rather $177.49 kind of great. I'm not going to say too much about this one, having done an unboxing video of the CE and a review of the game in the past, but I will say this. If you're looking for a base copy of the game, ask your local retailers. They might just have a copy. My local shops don't list their Vita games online anymore, yet there's still a copy of this in one of my local EB games for only $39. You may not be able to find much trace of it at a decent price online, but don't be afraid to ask in person in store. You might just get lucky. Now let's move on to the base release games that I either don't own a collector's edition of, or that released as only collector's editions. We'll start with some of the older systems here. As I said earlier, I largely pulled out of collecting for retro. The prices simply got too high and massively overshadowed the worth of the game. Though a lot of my older games do command a high enough price, none of them are exactly heavy hitters. These are a few of the notable games. On the original Game Boy, we have a copy of Pokemon Blue Complete in Box, a fine example of valuable but not rare. Pokemon Blue Complete in Box now sits at a rather shocking $78.88 USD. Making its second appearance on this list, we got another Fire Emblem game, this time just called Fire Emblem for the Game Boy Advance. I typically try to avoid cartridge-only games for handhelds, but yeah, at $39 for just the cart, I'm lucky to have even this. And while that might not sound like a lot of money in comparison to many other things on the list, for the Game Boy Advance's library, it's pretty high. Sticking with the Game Boy Advance, we also have a complete in-box copy of Golden Sun 2, one of the best original RPGs on the system. Golden Sun 2 will run you $50 USD for a complete in-box copy. Keeping things retro for a bit, we have a loose copy of Arcus Odyssey for the Sega Genesis, a game I maybe paid $10 for, but is now going for $41.82 for a loose version. Granted, mine looks like crap, but it plays, and playing it is what I wanted to buy it for. Next we have Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars. Just a loose copy, not much to say here, the game goes for $42.64. Another favorite of mine on the Genesis, we have Shining Force 2 Complete in Box. Despite numerous re-releases over the years, this Complete in Box Genesis game generally seems to be going up in value, and is now going for $87.20 USD. Still not leaving the Genesis, we have Castlevania Bloodlines Complete in Box. For my favorite Castlevania game, I had to track this one down, and it's a good thing I got the Complete in Box version when I did, as the price it's going for now is a bit insane, and seems to only be getting worse, currently sitting at $141 USD. Over on the PlayStation 1 library, there's only 2 games I really want to show in here. That's Tales of Destiny 1 and Tales of Destiny 2, otherwise known as Tales of Eternia. Tales of Destiny 1 is a game I originally got for $30, but is now in the ballpark of $116.90 USD, though mine is probably worth a little less as I am missing the manual. Tales of Destiny 2/Eternia edges it out in value just a bit, going for a respectable $133.13 for a complete copy. The most money I ever personally spent on a single standard release game was this one right here, initially buying this for $120 Canadian, which roughly equates to 91 USD. It was the last game I needed for my Tales of collection at the time, and I just wanted to finally cross it off the list. That said, 120 was the most I was ever willing to spend on a standard release game, with no additional pack-ins. Should I ever come across a Suikoden 2 locally, I may boost that by $10 or so, but I'm not holding my breath on that one. Over on the Nintendo 64, we have Conker's Bad Fur Day Complete in Box. This is one of the few Nintendo 64 games I felt the need to track down Complete in Box when I first started collecting. The game now sits at around 127 USD and has been holding that price for a number of years. Mine is a little dinged up, I guess. I'm gonna blame that on Canada Post, but it is what it is. The game plays, and it's still a great little collectathon from the golden age. Making its third but not quite final appearance is Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon Complete in Box on the Nintendo DS. Though fairly reasonable for a loose copy, this Complete in Box copy will still run you $51.07 USD. There aren't too many pricey DS games yet, but this one is holding its value strongly. And with the series rising in popularity, I suspect it will only go up from here. Moving over to the GameCube now, this system tends to hold its value very well. But I'd like to just ignore the more generic games with higher price tags like Super Smash Bros. Melee to look at a couple more interesting choices. Eternal Darkness. While it hasn't surpassed its MSRP yet, it has a huge cult following that still sings its praises today. Securing a copy of this will run you $42.06 USD. Still holding true as my favorite bullet hell of all time, we have Ikaruga. With several releases after this one, the GameCube version still holds its value at 53 USD. Lastly, on the GameCube, we have Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes. Despite being pretty poorly remembered by MGS fans, Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes is about the only MGS game that's still holding its value after so long, sitting at about $51.40 USD. Moving over to the Wii, there's really only 2 games I want to look at. First up is the Metroid Prime Trilogy Collector's Edition. This doesn't go for nearly as much as it used to following some retail BS on behalf of GameStop, but it still calls for $56.25. That said, mine is worth just a little bit less as the previous owner had lost the clear slipcase that goes over the steelbook. Putting that aside, it is still a great collection and one I hope is actually getting ported to the Switch as rumored. And making its final appearance on today's video, we have yet another Fire Emblem game. We have Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn. Not as pricey as Path of Radiance on GameCube, a game I have yet to track down and add to the collection, Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn commands a respectable 65 USD. Wow. On the Wii U, we have Gross for $52. We also have Fatal Frame 5, otherwise known as Project Zero Maiden of Black Water. The only English physical release this game had was a limited edition in PAL territories. And of course, that goes without saying that I had to import this one. Sales history is questionable, but the value seems anywhere between $140 and $171 Canadian, or 130 USD. I can't play this in my system and I own it strictly to keep my Fatal Frame series together, but the pack-ins are at least pretty cool to look at. I also have the Bayonetta 1 and 2 combo pack, which is unfortunately not easy to track the value of. It was pretty rare and pricey for a while, I remember, but the sales history is now saturated with the second print run of Bayonetta 2, which, unlike the first print, did not come with Bayonetta 1 packed in. Surprisingly, things like the Xenoblade Chronicles X Collector's Edition or Tokyo Mirage Sessions did not retain nearly as much value as I thought they would, but maybe in time we'll see them go up. And the last system we're going to look at here is the PlayStation 2. We'll start with Fatal Frame 3. While not quite pricey, it is at least above average, still hanging around $40, though its value has been on a steady rise for quite some time. Artanelico 1 and 2 as well, still holding their value around the $50 range. Xenosaga 3, a game we shockingly got for $1 Canadian, along with a first at a thrift store, now goes for $80 USD. Strangely enough, the challenge in tracking down this trilogy for us was finding a copy of Xenosaga 2 in the wild. Everybody locally that was selling it was selling the trilogy and refusing to separate it. But after a couple years of looking, we did finally come across a copy for about 15 bucks in a pawn shop. Jumping to double the value of the last game, we have Haunting Grounds, the rare horror by Capcom that didn't get much attention until long after its release. Value hasn't exactly been consistent on this one, but it's currently sitting around 160 bucks. And though it dips from time to time, it almost always bounces back even higher. Lastly, we have one of my favorite horrors of all time, Rule of Rose, a game I initially bought for about 45 to 60 USD quite a few years back. It is now one of the PlayStation 2's most sought after titles, going for more and more every year and currently calling for 305 USD for a complete in-box copy. Although I own games that are definitely more expensive than some of the ones I chose to include here, many of the ones I neglected are simply a little boring to look at. You guys don't need to hear about expensive repro carts with questionable or false values, nor do I suspect you'd enjoy hearing about generic games that retain value like Mario Party or Mario 64 or Super Metroid. There's always a chance too that some of the games in my collection are worth more than I suspect. I have somewhere over 1,000 physical games, and for the most part I don't know the value of most of them. These are just the ones I looked at on the shelf and thought might be worth something. After doing some research into the games I chose off my shelf, I put about 20 to 30 of them back, realizing that my judgment of their value was poor at best. Things like Odin Sphere on PlayStation 2, for example, I had to return to the shelf. I had no idea how much this was worth, but it's not worth much. Now from here, let's take a quick look at what I think will be going up in price in the future. Although some of the games in this section will be worth more than the games previously included, it's my thought that many of them just haven't been out long enough to fully go through the motions of hitting the aftermarket. That they haven't been available long enough for the price to truly be acknowledged as having gone up or down. Many of these, especially the Vita games, I suspect will go way up once Vita collectors start seriously working on building full libraries. Other games, I think the word about them just hasn't traveled enough yet, despite how long they've been out. Now to start, I'm just gonna throw these in here quickly. Grimmiddle Girls 1 and 2, Deathmark, Tokyo Tattoo Girls, and Drive Girls. That's a lot of girls. Now don't mistake me saying some of these may be costly someday, as me saying they're all good or worth owning. These games just didn't get high print numbers and will go scarce further down the line. On the PlayStation 4, I would say 428 Shibuya Scramble is going to go up. But even if it's not valuable in the future, this one will certainly become rare. And when that happens, just about anything can happen to its price. We also have Shadow of the Beast. Having never received a North American physical print, this game went pretty unnoticed over here. But in time, I believe it can establish a reputation. And when it does, the few copies printed in the few areas the game was released may be quickly eaten up. Zenki Zero Last Beginnings, still too new to call, but a game that I believe will only get its true reputation years after its release. And then it may be rather hard and pricey to track down. The only thing I can see that will stop this from happening is that a lot of Spike Chunsoft's games do get re-released and reprinted in collections. Udawari Ramono is kind of the same deal as Zenki Zero, but significantly more niche, and I'd argue has less copies printed at the time of recording. Trails of Cold Steel, also pretty likely to go up in value. It is a Kaseki game at the end of the day. They're catching on for sure, but we're still not quite there. The audience for this game will be way larger several years from now, and several years from now, new copies likely won't be getting printed. Next up, we have Nostalgia for the Nintendo DS, a pretty neat little RPG for the original DS that almost nobody paid attention to at launch. Over the years, it's been gaining an audience, but the potential audience is still a long ways away from fully discovering the title. And when they do, the price of this game can easily double or triple in price from where it currently sits. Ever Oasis on the 3DS too, I think will go up. People who paid attention to this at launch didn't quite get what they were looking for, myself included, and so reception just wasn't the best, garnering a moderate, lukewarm response. Compound that with a very low print run, and this game just didn't make the splash it should have at launch. That said, I believe it will eventually find an audience among people who are fans of games like Fantasy Life and Popolocrois. And when it does find its audience, copies of this game will be long gone from store shelves, as they pretty much already are. I think Stella Glow on the 3DS is also going to go up. Though it was experienced by very few, those who played it have almost nothing but good things to say about it. With a complete lack of other releases and seemingly none on the horizon, Stella Glow has potential to be one of the most sought after 3DS games in years to come. And lastly, I'm going to add the DuckTales remaster to this, a game that was recently pulled from all digital stores. Though my Wii U copy here might not be as desirable as some of the other ones, it might be among one of the more rare versions, so anything could happen to the price of this. And that's all from me today. As you guys can likely tell, I'm definitely not an investment collector. I just buy what I think I can afford and what I will spend a little bit of time on. There may be more hidden gems in this collection, but far be it from me to just be able to tell which ones they are beyond this. I've always been much more about the collecting itself and playing than about the selling or investment tracking. And with that, that's just some of the things that I think are the most expensive games in my collection. If you guys enjoyed the video, you know the deal. Like, comment, subscribe, and share the video if you can. Thank Patreon as well for the video suggestion, and as always folks, thanks for watching.